Yo Shelb does aquariums.
Hi, welcome. It's good to see you. The last time you saw me may have been with our dry start low-tech setup. Now we're here for a part 2. So let's talk about what happened last time. Last time we did the substrate, the hardscape, and we planted all our dwarf hair grass. And it's been 4 weeks, I think.
What is time, anyway?
So, the question on everybody's mind, did it work? No, not exactly, but stay with me here. I think it could work. Cue the playback. This is where we landed last video. Now, I got the idea of doing a low-tech dry start from Dr. Walstad's Shrimp Bowl PDF, where she tries a dry start with extra fertilizer and dwarf hair grass, and she was very successful. For the first 2 weeks after planting, I was getting fabulous growth. After planting, I left town for a week, and then I came back.
That it would not stay humid enough in there, but look at this dwarf hair grass. It is taking off. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to trim it soon. It looks amazing. I put a sponge in a bowl, hoping that would help with humidity in it. It looks pretty great.
And then it did awesome for the next week. When I left town the second time, that's where things started to go wrong. When I returned around the beginning of week 4, the hair grass had started to brown, especially around the bottom. I think the issue here was a buildup of excess fertilizer in the substrate because of how much fertilizer we've got going on here, causing root burn. I used Father Fish's substrate method, but I didn't add quite as much sand in the very front as he does, and that's why I think we're seeing some ammonia buildup, especially in that area. The plants further from the soil on the top of the hill were doing much better. So I think without quite so many extra fertilizers or more of a sand barrier in between, you may have much better luck. I didn't see any melting once I submerged the grass, and in fact, it absolutely shot off, which further spoke to my theory of fertilizer root burn, since the water changes would dilute that. And on a separate note, the hydrocoidal tripartita actually did really well this whole time. There's a man in a neon vest down there. And we're back. Anyway, interesting journey. I learned a lot. I'd love to try it again. Maybe. I don't know. I feel like with dwarf hair grass, I don't need to. I would just plant it. I think I would let it root in for a week or so and then go ahead and fill it up. In this video, we're going to plant the rest of the tank. We are finishing this puppy up. But first, it's time we talk about plants. Actually, let me get my whiteboard. This has been a long time coming anyway. Anyway, the plants for this type of setup, which is not exactly Walstad, it is not exactly a Father Fish tank. It's a low-tech, deep sand substrate planted nano tank. We don't have a filter, so we don't have any water flow, and we are relying on those plants for a lot of the work. The back of the tank, the front of the tank is that dwarf hair grass, which looks super beautiful, and then we need the back of the tank to be our workhorse. That is pulling nitrates out of the water, it's pulling excess nutrition out of the water, and then it is creating oxygen for us because we're not going to have a filter moving the water for us. This is just the cutest little aquarium. So, and world famous, so there's that. The other best thing about it, there's a Goodwill across the store, so get your thrifting in. Our top priorities while plant shopping, obviously pretty plants that excite us, but more importantly, we need around 70 to 80% of our plants to be fast growing, because fast growing plants consume the most nitrates, ammonia, excess nutrition, and we need plants that produce a lot of oxygen.
I love it here. Can I live here? I got the goods. How pretty aquatic plants look in white bowls, like fancy little salads. Let's plant some plants. This is Anubias Minima. Anubias is not one of our workhorse plants, but it's super easy to keep happy and maintain. I pulled this from one of my tanks. Something to note,
you don't want to plant Anubias in the substrate, but rather glue it to rocks, driftwood, or other hardscape. Red Tiger Lotus. At the store they had this gorgeous mature plant they were willing to sell me, so we'll be able to have a more finished look much sooner with this guy. Tiger Lotuses are fast growing and very easy bulb plant. Just make sure to only plant the bulb about 1/3 of the way in. If you plant it all the way in, it will rot. Vallisneria contortionist, or corkscrew vallisneria. This is another that's grown really well in my other Walstad tanks. It's fast growing and it's one of the best oxygen producing plants. Rotala Green. This is a new one for me. It came out of a tank with a lot of CO2, so we'll see how it adjusts, but I loved that bright green color and the softness of its leaves. It's a fast grower, so it should be a great addition to our workhorse part of the tank. Egeria Densa, also known as Anacharis, is just an absolute favorite of mine for its workhorse abilities. It grows like a weed. In fact, it's considered a weed, so please be very careful with it because it's an invasive species basically everywhere. But it consumes all the gunk out of the water column like nobody's business, and it produces a ton of oxygen. It's just a easy, happy little plant. Alternathera Rosanervig. It's another new one for me. It's a medium rate grower. I love the color. It will lose some of that color without the added CO2 injection, but it should still give that nice, soft, rosy glow. It also does something to break up the textures we have going with that different sized leaf. Ludwigia Natans Super Red is another of my all-time favorites. Fast grower, produces a ton of oxygen, and all it needs to create that gorgeous red color is enough iron and a nice bright light. African water fern. This gets a bit tall, but it's a slow grower and easy to manage. I've attached it to some rocks because it's another that does not want to be shoved into the substrate. And now a short pizza break. This is my pizza song. It isn't very long. I'm the happiest girl in the world, but I don't smile with my teeth. This very exciting package arrived while I was gone. It is a commercial grade Lazy Susan for this tank. I did not imagine ever buying a commercial grade Lazy Susan, but I have to say I'm pretty thrilled by it. I mean, look at the quality. Next, I filled the water up a tad because I thought I'd just make my life a little bit harder. Then I proceeded to lift 50 pounds of water by myself. I did nearly die, but I think the results were worth it. My ultimate plan for this tank is to find a stand for the light so that the tank can be turned around all the way around freely. I also just love the very clean look of having nothing attached to the tank at all. Now, you can't do this with every tank, but for something that's under 10 gallons and planted with a lot of good, fast-growing, oxygen-producing plants, it does really well. And now for our last couple of plants. Hygrophila Pinnatifida has a moderate growth rate. It's just the most beautiful leaves. The color will be a little bit more green without CO2, but I just love the texture. And now for floating plants. Salvinia Natans is the showstopper. I just love the rust-colored roots and that it looks like a bouquet softly floating along the water. And there she is. I think it's a lovely build that performs multiple duties. It not only looks fun and lush, but it should be very low maintenance. We're not going to do any gravel vacuuming here. After a month or two, we should be down to very, very few water changes. And Tina, who will soon be keeping this beauty in her home, will just have to trim the plants, remove floating plants, and top off the water every couple of weeks. Next time you see this tank, we will be taking it to its final home, filling it up, and adding new little shrimp buddies.
Put your questions and general comments down below. Like, subscribe if you want to stay on this train. Thanks for being here. The tank has been planted for a week and I've already had to trim the hair grass twice. It is growing a ton, so that's awesome. The African ferns have melted a little bit, but that's normal. They're kind of sensitive when they go into a new environment. What else? But everything else is growing really well. Looks really beautiful.